Okay, I got it. Okay. Okay. So as one can see from the screen that I'm sharing, lactoferrin has a pleiotropic effects on many aspects of health and life. So it's almost I think even a discussion of this for a day, possibly even a week, will not exhaust the topic. It's so exhaustive that I won't be able to do justice with it in the time that I have. So let me just give you a brief introduction, and it's an overview about lactoferrin, but hopefully enough to get your interest and to get you to look into this and to possibly use it in the treatment, not just of cancer, not just of COVID-19, but other diseases. Just as a side note, I think this pandemic has caused so much death and suffering, but I see a glimmer, a seed, as it were, that has sprouted as a result of this pandemic from our discovery of ivermectin, and in my part, also I think lactoferrin, because with what we learned from ivermectin and lactoferrin, we could theoretically, over the years, save as much, if not more, people who died from this pandemic. The cumulative effect of just learning more about different treatments and about disease, absent now, I mean, apart from what big pharma leads us to believe, basically the pandemic has opened our eyes to what's happened, and the manipulation and the censorship and the suppression, and open our eyes into a new pathway that would help us to perhaps achieve better health and better treatment of various diseases. Dr. Chetty was very formidable in establishing the philosophical foundation of the treatment, and that was beautifully done. And so I just would like to add to that by saying this pandemic has given us some opportunities, including our discovery of ivermectin and lactoferrin that we could probably use for many other diseases, in addition to cancer and COVID-19. So with that, let me get started. Okay. Okay, lactoferrin was first discovered over 80 years ago. It was discovered initially in bovine milk, or milk from the cow, and then later on from human milk. It's a glycoprotein, and its most interesting characteristics is that it binds to iron. That's why the term lactoferrin was used, because the initial discovery was that it comes from milk, and then it binds to iron. So lacto for milk, ferrin for iron. Now, lactoferrin is a glycoprotein that is very similar to transferrin. But unlike other transferrin, lactoferrin affinity for iron is several hundred times greater than transferrin, and that's amazing. And then one of the things about lactoferrin is that it's resistant to heating for several hours, not several minutes, several hours at 56 degrees centigrade, and it denatures only at around 80 to 90 degrees centigrade. Moreover, it's able to bind to the iron until even at very low pH level, so even at very acidic environs. And it's only when the acidity reaches 3, 2, and 1 that lactoferrin can yield the iron. Okay. So the highest concentration of lactoferrin is found in colostrum and breast milk. How much lactoferrin there is in the milk will depend upon the time of the the lactation. But there's a lot more lactoferrin in colostrum than there would be in mature milk. And despite its name, lactoferrin can actually be found in other biological fluids. That includes saliva, tears, mucus, seminal fluid, bronchial secretions, and secondary granules of neutrophils. Now, our cells can actually produce lactoferrin. This is surprising because for somebody who probably just learned about lactoferrin today, because it's actually found in many parts of our organs. So kidney, lungs, gallbladder, pancreas, intestine, liver, prostate, saliva, tears, sperm, cerebrospinal fluid, urine, bronchial secretions, vaginal discharge, synovial fluid, umbilical cord blood, blood plasma, and cells of the immune system. So in addition to being found in milk, lactoferrin can be found in other cells, but at a very minute level. Now, this is very interesting to me. Lactoferrin is normally secreted at epithelial lining mucosal surfaces and plays important role in innate immune mechanisms in humans. I think there's no doubt whatsoever that lactoferrin plays such a very essential part in our immune system, beginning with the neonates, the newly born infants, until just before death. Lactoferrin plays a very important role in the immune system, and that will become evident as I just go through this quickly. Now, okay, by chelating iron, lactoferrin removes a very important ingredient for many pathogens to grow, which is iron. And that's why lactoferrin, depending upon the bacteria, can either be a bactericidal or bacteriostatic. It actually is the same with some virus. It's also very good virucidal or virustatic. And then in addition to that, lactoferrin also can affect the electrical charge of certain compounds. But in the case of the bacteria, for example, it can destabilize the microbial membrane and prevents microbial adherence to host cells. So it has very good antimicrobial actions. And then lactoferrin is also an immunomodulator, just like to some extent ivermectin in the viral in the immune dysregulation stage of COVID-19. In effect, it enhances neutrophil endothelial adhesion interactions and neutrophil aggregations, reactive oxygen intermediate production, and chemotaxis. So it's there. Now, there's a wrong impression by some that lactoferrin is digested, and once it's digested, it's destroyed. And that view persisted for quite a while, but eventually experiments show that it actually survives the digestion, and it is hydrolyzed to stable immunologically active peptides upon contact with the acidic environment of the gastric tube. So it continues to be effective after oral administrations. So taking ivermectin, taking lactoferrin orally it's a valid pathway when it's used for therapeutic effects. So it says here, lactoferrin can reach the intestine mainly in the form of peptide fragments where they act locally on the microbiota and the immune system associated with the local mucosa, thereby enhancing the immunity of all mucous membranes in the body. Now, this is so important because it has been said that most diseases start at the gut. And one of the major impacts of lactoferrin is actually in the gut, in the endothelial lining, and with that, the microbiome, and with that, the immune system. And with the immune system, we now could easily see a pathway to how it can benefit as a adjunctive treatment for cancer. Now, there are two types of lactoferrin that we're talking about. One is human, and one is bovine or sourced from cows. And then there is the 77% similarities between human lactoferrin and bovine lactoferrin. But because bovine lactoferrin is easier to obtain, it is what is usually studied. Now, as far as clinical effects on newborns and infants are concerned, there are indications that the clinical effects of lactoferrin, whether it be bovine or human, are the same for newborns and infants. Now, I have to say as early as now is that there's quite a huge difference in the effect of lactoferrin for neonates and infants below 6 months and those above 6 months. And for reasons still not well understood, when lactoferrin is given to a neonate or infant below 6 months, the lactoferrin actually releases the iron bound to it and donates that or gives that up for use by the body. Whereas for when they're older than 6 months, the lactoferrin actually holds onto the iron and doesn't let go. So that's a very interesting interplay, and that's an important distinction when reading studies on lactoferrin on neonates and infants and those that are used for adults. Okay. Both have been shown, both human lactoferrin and bovine lactoferrin have been shown to have anti-cancer effect for tumor prevention and treatment. So to a large extent and for most purposes, because human lactoferrin is very, very difficult to acquire and very, very expensive if it's available, bovine lactoferrin is used. Now, there are two types of lactoferrin. In addition to the different sources, there are two types of lactoferrin. One is apolactoferrin and one is hololactoferrin. Now, as shown in the screen, apolactoferrin is more easily available and more affordable. So when one buys lactoferrin from the store, it's usually apolactoferrin. Hololactoferrin is more difficult to access and far more expensive. Now, there are similarities to both apolactoferrin and hololactoferrin, but hololactoferrin has differences that makes it more effective as a treatment for some cancer. So, for example, for the purposes of inducing ferroptosis of triple-negative breast cancer cells or TNBC cells, hololactoferrin is more effective. Okay, I think I'm taking too much time already. So let me. I'm just starting here, but let me go through it even faster. I'll be brief, Manala. The quality of lactoferrin is of critical importance when it's used as a treatment. Not all lactoferrins are made equal. So some lactoferrin are better than the others. I have a lot more here that explains it, but I think we're running out of time. So Manolo, I'll stop here. If only for you to have more time to explain our cases and also for us to go to the Q&A. I'll reserve some of this if there's any question about this later on. Thank you, Manolo.